The Taming of Coyote, Chapter 11. Things grew rather quiet after a few minutes. The bugs and frogs, the trickling of the water, some rustling leaves. That's all there was to hear. At this point, she couldn't hear the birds anymore. The sounds were nature's white noise. It was at this time that Sonia began to get goosebumps. It wasn't just the chill. There was a mysterious, eerie feeling. The woods were becoming creepy. A snarl came from the shadows. Sonia was caught between fear and relief. Perhaps Ezra was returning to her, but what if that growl didn't come from Ezra? It was rather deep. Ezra's growl wasn't that deep. An involuntary whine came from Sonia's throat. What if it wasn't Ezra? Who would protect her if he were still on the road? She spun around to the best of her ability to follow a shadow as it circled about her. She paled at its size. That wasn't Ezra. Whatever it was huge. Unable to run, which was probably an unwise thing to do anyway, she scooted against the trunk of a particularly thick tree. Boldly the creature came forward and out of the shadows. Once in the light, Sonia's eyes went wide and she gasped. It was him! That big red coyote stood before her. He growled, intense as his eyes fixed intently onto hers. It's you, she stammered. Now she was in his territory, at his mercy. You are the woodland devil. You are from the village of Turn. He spoke in a voice deep and husky. Sonia tried to cry out, but no sound came. This coyote spoke. You are very bold, or you are very stupid. The people of Turn are not welcome in my woods, lest they gamble their lives and sacrifice themselves to serve as examples. Even you. Perhaps you grow far too confident and disrespectful. Sonia felt the tears begin to well up. Stupid, she whispered. What's that? I'm stupid. She wiped her face. I freed Ezra from the crate in the square, and then I hid in the wagons to avoid getting caught and punished. Then I got lost out here. Ezra? As if on cue, the juvenile coyote slid down the hill. He bounced himself over the creek and wagged his tail at the sight of Sonia. He didn't seem all too bothered by the other's presence. The red coyote studied him. You saved a coyote? A Turnian? I saved you, didn't I? She asked nervously. I didn't want you being shot. You are naive, he chuckled. No human can kill me. Still, the innocence of childhood is refreshing. The only reason you hate me is because I'm from Turn, she sniffled. My worries and concerns for the coyotes of these woods mean nothing? Why take it out on me? You're only angry because Turn became a village that turned to God, rather than the supernatural forces of pagan spirits and otherkin, an angry false god against a mighty one. The coyote cackled wildly. You truly are naive. What a foolish thing to say. He stalked closely and smiled wickedly, exposing his long, sharp teeth. Ezra whimpered and lowered his tail. Why was he acting like that? There are many villages that have given up the old ways in favor of your god. I have no concerns or qualms with your god. I couldn't care less what faith any village practices, so long as a respect to my woods is kept. Turn flatters itself by coming up with such a fairy tale. Turn is the only village that incurs my wrath. If it is for religion's sake, then why only Turn? My rage is not a spiritual one, Sonia. It is a personal one. Sonia trembled at his voice. It was harsh and frightening. What are you going to do to me? Are you going to eat me? Ezra whimpered and whined. He had a strong desire to protect Sonya, but in the presence of this monster, he could do nothing. He was the master of the woods. The red coyote began to circle about the child and the tree in a taunting manner. Perhaps I could chew you up and spit you out. Maybe I'll consume you. Perhaps I won't even bother. Perhaps I'll just leave you to my pack to gnaw and enjoy. But look at how pathetic you are now. I could even just leave you here for dead. Sonya covered her head defensively and began to cry. Her sobs grew loud and hard rather quickly. Too much in so little time. She was too overwhelmed. Ezra couldn't stand it any longer, and he barked at his master. He stopped short and contemplated such a defiant behavior. His eyes fell back onto Sonya. The monster coyote's heart began to sink after a few minutes. He had seen this child countless times in the woods near Turn. She was a peaceful soul, and had always seemed to respect the nature he cared for. She had seen him in Turn. She had even witnessed behavior unbefitting of him. Still, she chose to protect him over herself. A guilty nostalgia washed over him. She was so much like them. He lowered his tail and pulled his lips back into a frown. As he flattened his ears, he took a step closer. Don't cry. Not like that. Sonya. Sonya peered up at him with weepy eyes. It was the second time he had referred to her by name. You know my name. Yes, I've heard you being called many times, he replied flatly as he sat down on his haunches. Enough of this now. Perhaps I acted quite hastily and rudely. You are not like the people of Turn. You are more like the people of Turn so many years ago. I should not be so blind as to not see that candle in the darkness. He lifted his head and sniffed the air. It will be a hard winter this year. The frost will come early. It will grow very cold, very fast. This is no place for a human child. He stood and came even closer to her. Understandably, she flinched and pushed herself back against the tree trunk. What are you going to do? I'm going to help you. Climb onto my back, Sonya. In your state, you won't be getting anywhere very fast. You'll end up freezing and catching your death out here if left to the elements. Then, you're not going to eat me? She asked. I'm not going to eat you. Then what? She demanded. Even in your state, you are so demanding. Such gall you have. He let out a sigh. It was not particularly clear if it was a sigh of annoyance or something else. I'm taking you someplace where you will be safe, warm, and dry. You need to get your wounds tended to, your clothes washed, and your belly full. The first item of concern is to make sure you can rest while that ankle is on the mend. Sonya gave a glance to Ezra. He seemed more excited about the beast's presence than he had a moment ago. She knew he wouldn't set her up to be in danger. So if he was okay with this, so was she. Do you have a name? Coyote, he replied. It made her swallow hard to hear that name again. Simply called Coyote. Now climb on. You are small enough to ride on me. Sonya hesitated. Who was he kidding? Grown men were small enough to ride on him. He was quite harsh and demanding of her. She wasn't sure if she liked him. No wonder he was deemed a devil. One moment he was all for killing her, and now he wanted to help her? How much trust was she really able to put into this monster that had cursed her village for decades? Still, it was worth the risk, wasn't it? She couldn't travel on her own, and she was hopelessly lost. Coyote's offer was the best option open to her. She reached up and grabbed a fistful of his coarse fur. Digging her fingers deep, she could feel an amazingly soft undercoat hidden beneath the more straw-like overcoat. She pulled hard to drag herself upwards. He let out a tough grunt, but didn't seem to really mind the manhandling, or find it too bothersome. He had tough skin and a lot of endurance. He stood fast, claws dug firmly into the ground. She was able to pull herself onto his back, and then she tried to situate herself comfortably. "Will you be going fast?" she asked. "Not too fast," he replied. "But in order to get home by dark, we can't dally. Hold on very tight. You don't want to fall off." And with that, no more needed to be said. Coyote felt her grip tighten on his shoulders, pulling the fur into clumps like reins. When he was sure that she was secure, he took a few slow steps to test. Satisfied that she wasn't going anywhere, he began to chug along at a full trot. It was just short of a run. Close behind him was the loyal and much happier Ezra. He yipped and barked to show his approval of Coyote's choice. Coyote, on the other hand, was rather silent throughout the whole trip, yet he considered both of them very carefully the entire way. The interaction between them was odd, but it wasn't unheard of. It forced him to remember, then to hold back plaguing yet silent thoughts and memories. Now was just not the time to consider them. Quite some time had passed. Ezra's endless enthusiasm seemed to finally start to dwindle as he began to tire from a days-long travel. Coyote had become rather comfortable with the weight on his back. Sonia had spread her length along his spine. She had nodded off a while back. He could tell by the way she breathed into his fur. His size was such that she could nap carelessly if symmetrically placed, and she was. Coyote finally slowed himself to a stop. He looked about to examine his surroundings. Everything seemed to be in order, as usual. His home was in a perfect location. It was shaded, yet the lovely scenery added a sense of paradise to it. Water could be heard in the distance. At this point, a drink sure did sound good. It made Coyote lick his dry lips in anticipation. He peered over his shoulder at the sleeping child. He debated what to do, but then decided that things would be very difficult if he chose not to wake her. Yet, was he ready to wake her? As if to ask for advice, he turned to Ezra. He was no help. He simply cocked his head to the side and let out a whine. Coyote turned away with a bit of an aggravated sigh. "Great," he muttered.